February 18th and protesting President Trump's national emergency.
Tens of thousands of demonstrators flooding streets across the country today as Democrats prepare for a fight.
The brand new legal battle over the border.
The Deputy Attorney General offered to wear a wire into the White House. He was not joking. He was absolutely serious.
Big interview last night and fears of a bureaucratic coup to oust President Trump, and it's triggering calls for a deep state investigation.
The bombshell revelations in Andrew McCabe's shocking interview, and no longer a victim.
Yeah, a big confession about the alleged attack on Empire actor Jussie Smollett turns the case upside down.
Crazy story. Fox and Friends First continues right now. President's Day. I'm Jillian Neely.
And I'm Rob Schmidt. Thanks for starting your day with us. And protests against the president's new move to protect the southern border expected across the country today. Liberal activists urging lawmakers to terminate President Trump's national emergency declaration.
Now, 5 states are teaming up to take the matter to court. Griff Jenkins is live in Washington with what to expect. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Jillian and Rob. Yeah, they're taking it to court, but they're taking it to the streets in a big way today, calling it President's Day protest. More than 240 actions across the nation, organized by a coalition of activist groups led by MoveOn.org. Their goal, to fight the president's national emergency declaration and address what MoveOn's campaign director calls, quote, this false crisis is an illegal, unconstitutional power grab that undermines American democracy to advance his racist agenda. This is House Democrats plan to move forward with a resolution opposing the president's declaration, which Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff says is unprecedented.
Is this the first time a president has tried to declare an emergency when Congress explicitly rejected funding for the particular project that the president is advocating?
And already lawsuits are underway. At least 5 states, starting with California, plan to sue. But White House senior advisor Stephen Miller says the president is fully prepared to defend his declaration.
He's going to protect his national emergency declaration, guaranteed. This is a threat in our country, not overseas, not in Belarus, not in Zimbabwe. And the president can't defend this country, then he cannot fulfill his constitutional oath of office.
Miller also says the president could issue the first veto of his term if Congress votes to disapprove. The president, by the way, is in Florida today. He makes a speech this afternoon in Miami addressing the situation in Venezuela. Rob, Jillian?
Okay, of course we'll have that. Griff, thank you so much. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe doubling down on why he says he was fired from the FBI. McCabe also says, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein was not joking about wearing a wire to record the president, although Rosenstein maintains that the comments were made in jest.
I believe I was fired because I opened a case against the President of the United States. The Deputy Attorney General offered to wear a wire into the White House. He said, I never get searched. I could easily wear a recording device. They wouldn't know it was there. Now, he was not joking. He was absolutely serious.
Rosenstein thrown under the bus there. McCabe also says it was Rosenstein's idea to attempt to use the 25th Amendment against the president. And the president sounding off on Twitter, writing, quote, the Mueller investigation is totally conflicted, illegal, and rigged, should never have been allowed to begin except for the collusion and many crimes committed by the Democrats. Witch hunt. All right, conservative talk radio host Rush Limbaugh backing the president, calling this one of the greatest political coup attempts in history.
People unelected simply because they don't like a guy's hairstyle or like where he came from decided the American people's decision was invalid and began a systematic process to get him thrown out of office. This is a silent coup. These guys, if you ask me, ought to be the ones in jail. They ought to be the ones under investigation. What they have done working with agents from the Obama intelligence agencies is simply unprecedented. This is one of the greatest political hoaxes that has ever been perpetrated on the people of this country, certainly in a couple of generations.
All right. Limbaugh with Chris Wallace yesterday believes the recent compromise spending bill to avert another partial government shutdown was an effort by critics to sink the president's 2020 chances.
suspect who shot at police during a 12-hour standoff has died. Nam Lee pronounced dead in Mississippi after being taken into custody by a SWAT team. Lee allegedly killed 4 people during the standoff, which started as a domestic hostage situation. 2 small children were freed unharmed. A motive is still unknown. A manhunt is intensifying for a man suspected of shooting a Virginia police officer. Officials consider Donquel Maurice Gray to be armed and dangerous after he allegedly shot and injured an officer during a traffic stop. The driver of the car surrendered as Gray jumped into the driver's seat and drove away. The car was later found abandoned. The wounded officer is expected to be okay.
All right, big developing story. The reported hate crime case against Empire actor Jussie Smollett takes a drastic turn.
Yeah, 2 brothers who were persons of interest tell police the actor paid them to stage this whole alleged attack. Jeff Paul is live in Chicago with the latest on the investigation. Wow, Jeff.
Yeah, right now police are pushing Smollett to speak with them again. Investigators say there are some key developments that they want to follow up on with the actor. Now, this all started 3 weeks ago on January 29th when Smollett reported the alleged attack. He said at the time 2 masked men punched him, shouting anti-gay and racial slurs at him, claiming they shouted, "This is MAGA country." He believed they poured bleach and looped a rope around his neck. Police considered him a victim. Then, 2 weeks later, 2 brothers who are from Nigeria were arrested. Smollett then spoke with ABC's GMA about the attack following those arrests. But the next day, the 2 brothers were released without any charges being filed. The attorney for the brothers, who were once considered suspects, says he's thankful for the efforts by police who are trying to get to the bottom of this case.
They're tired. They're glad that justice prevailed for them. They put the work in, and I'm glad to say that they're on their way. We heard a lot of police work, a lot of good police work. A lot of hard work on our end, but at the end of the day, what's up, buddy? As I said before, innocence prevailed.
As Smollett's attorneys say, he'll continue to cooperate with police and release the statement. They said in part, Jussie Smollett is angered and devastated by recent reports that the perpetrators are individuals he's familiar with. He has now been further victimized by claims attributed to these alleged perpetrators that Jussie played a role in his own attack. Nothing is further from the truth, and anyone claiming otherwise is lying. No word just yet if or when Smollett will speak with police again. Back to you.
All right, Jeff.
Unreal. All right, Jeff, thank you so much.
2020 presidential candidate Cory Booker not commenting on the latest turn in the Smollett investigation. The Democratic senator initially blasted the reported attack as a modern-day lynching.
Well, the information's still coming out. I'm going to withhold until all the information actually comes out. Since 9/11, the majority of the terrorist attacks on our soil have been right-wing terrorist attacks. The majority of them, white supremacist attacks.
Booker making these comments at a campaign event in New Hampshire.
All right, a new push to enshrine a former president on a $1 coin. The Senate introducing a bill to mint coins honoring former President George H.W. Bush and First Lady Barbara Bush. They died months apart last year. One of the bill's co-sponsors, Republican Senator Susan Collins, says the coin would pay tribute to their courage, duty, honor, and compassion.
A little bit of a mix here on the East Coast overnight. Janice has been busy in the weather department for weeks now.
Has been busy.
Look at the West Coast, too.
Right.
I mean, they're getting smeared on the West Coast.
Well, here's the temperatures, right? So we're still dealing with cold air across much of the country. And so when we get these systems from the west, some of that energy moves across the central U.S., parts of the Great Lakes, and the Northeast. Now, New York southward, mainly a rain event with this next week system. But we've got another one on the way Tuesday, Wednesday. So let's take a look at that. There's our system across the East Coast again. Mostly rain. We could see a mixture of rain and sleet and snow north of New York City, west of the area. And then watch this next one, Tuesday into Wednesday. We could see the potential for severe weather as well as a mixing of ice across the Ohio and Tennessee River Valley. And then again, more snow for the Midwest, the Great Lakes in towards the Northeast. Here's your precipitation. Also want to make mention the West is still very active. We'll see some coastal rain and a lot of big snow, especially especially across the southern and central Rockies. We're going to be dealing with the potential for flooding over the southeast and the mid-Atlantic coast. You can see several inches here, and then we have our next chance at snow for parts of the northeast and New England Tuesday into Wednesday.
It's like something everywhere.
Yes, you're right. Very colorful map, so pay close attention to your local forecasts, and I'll be here all week.
You know I'll be bothering you for the timing of that.
That's all right. That's what I'm here for.
All right.
Okay.
Janice, thank you so much.
Talk to you later.
All right, 11 minutes after the hour, new calls for an investigation after Andrew McCabe's bombshell interview on 60 Minutes last night. Our next guest, a former U.S. attorney, says one of the big issues will be whether the wearing the wire discussion with Rod Rosenstein was a joke or not. He's going to explain that coming up.
Snatching children from their parents, or turning our back on refugees at our border. The American people understand, please, because it makes us embarrassing.
Joe Biden blasting America on the international stage. Is this the rhetoric we can look forward to this campaign season? Social media is sounding off. Stay right there.
We're going to find out what happened here, and the only way I know to find out is to call the people in under oath and find out through questioning who's telling the truth, because the underlying accusation is beyond stunning.
Senator Lindsey Graham is one of the loudest voices behind new calls for an investigation into what he's calling a bureaucratic coup.
This comes after fired FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe reveals some bombshells about an alleged plan to secretly record the president in hopes of removing him from office. Joining us now with reaction is former U.S. Attorney Kendall Coffey. Sir, thanks for coming on. It doesn't get much bigger than a group of guys sitting around trying to figure out how to get the president out of the White House. What did you make of that interview last night?
Well, it was really disturbing, wasn't it? Two people at the highest levels of law enforcement deciding that the president needed to be removed. This is all according to McCabe because, one, he fired James Comey, which was his constitutional right. Two, he had a different view with them on the Russia investigation. And I guess three, he was critical of some parts of the FBI's investigation. That is no basis to be trying to undermine the President of the United States, much less set him up with an electronic recording.
Let's go ahead and take a listen to part of this interview last night, and McCabe specifically on Rod Rosenstein wearing a wire into the White House. Listen to this.
The discussion of the 25th Amendment was simply Rod raised the issue and discussed it with me in the context of thinking about how many other cabinet officials might support such an effort. The Deputy Attorney General offered to wear a wire into the White House. He was not joking. He was absolutely serious.
Now, before we get your reaction, I want to also read this statement by Melissa Schwartz, who is a spokeswoman for Andrew McCabe. And this reads, quote, certain statements made by Mr. McCabe in interviews have been taken out of context and misrepresented. At no time did Mr. McCabe participate in any extended discussions about the use of the 25th Amendment, nor is he aware of any such discussions. Seems like there's a little bit of a difference there between the statement and what he said in that interview. What do you make of that?
Well, I heard his words just as you did, and we know what a serious matter it was indeed. And that's why I think Senator Graham is right. People need to be under oath talking about something of this grave national importance, and follow-up questions need to be asked. We saw the Deputy Attorney General's denial, but it was a nuanced denial. He didn't say that these discussions never took place, and that's why a full exploration of this is needed. The idea that something like the 25th Amendment could be loosely interpreted to undermine the election decision of the people of America is deeply and profoundly troubling.
Yeah, and you start to wonder, how long is Rosenstein going to last in his job at this point with this out there now and the president, what he's going to think. James Baker, former FBI attorney, says there were two cabinet officials early on who were ready to support the 25th Amendment and get the president out of there. That furthers that narrative that Rosenstein, that this was being discussed, that this was real, that this was actually something that they were trying to do.
That it wasn't a joke.
Yeah, and what do you make of that?
Well, I think it's clearly not a joke. And if somebody comes in front of the Congress or the Senate and says it was a joke, that's going to fall apart. That's going to get examined as a potentially false statement. But I also think we should find out who those cabinet members are, because the 25th Amendment, how it's applied and what it means, is apparently a big deal. And if people thought there was a basis to remove the president in a situation where the 25th Amendment refers to presidents that are immobilized, not controversial, not presidents who disagree with senior staff. So if somebody was thinking that, we really need to find out what their reasoning was and make sure that on an ongoing basis, no president, Republican or Democrat, can be challenged without real basis under the 25th Amendment. We don't want incipient ousters being discussed at levels of law enforcement or anywhere else.
Have you thought about who it might be, these two cabinet members? I mean, Tillerson kind of comes to mind as one that might have been early on. What do you think?
It's hard for me to figure it out, but I'm pretty sure that there were specific names in mind. And in fact, McCabe said he couldn't remember who they might be. But I think there are definitely individuals who had made some discussions, and we should find out what their reasoning was and make sure that even if nobody else is left to get fired at this point, bringing all this out in the air is an important form of accountability, and there needs to be accountability.
All right, well, continue to follow this and see how it plays out. Kendall Coffey, thank you for your time.
Crazy story. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for including me.
It is 20 minutes after the hour. First, she was slammed for her anti-Semitic remarks. Now, Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is fundraising for an Islamic terror-linked group. You won't believe this one.
We know when the revolution was, 1776. When was the Constitution signed, ma'am?
I don't know what year.
1767.
All right, what do you know about American history? A new survey says a lot of us don't know much. Our own Pete Hegseth hit the street to test people on this presidency. It's coming up. All right, California taking steps toward becoming a welfare state, or at least dipping the toe in the water. The city of Stockton officially rolling out a program to give away free money. Sounds nice, huh? 130 locals have begun receiving $500 a month on prepaid debit cards. This is an effort to actually combat poverty. The program is funded by private donors and will last through next summer. It could be expanded to use public funds, though, if they deem the experiment is successful. We'll see how they figure that out.
A transgender bathroom ban could come to an end in Virginia. The Gloucester County School Board holding a public hearing tomorrow to debate whether transgender students can use restrooms corresponding with their gender identity rather than their gender at birth. Former student Gavin Grimm has been fighting for the district for nearly 4 years after he says he was denied access to his high school's men's room. See what happens there.
A new study finds that most Americans couldn't pass a basic U.S. citizenship test. The Woodrow Wilson Foundation found that only 4 out of 10 Americans would actually pass.
Wow. Our own Pete Hegseth put the crowd on Fox Square to the test. Look at this.
We know when the revolution was, 1776. When was the Constitution signed, ma'am?
I don't know what year.
1767.
The Constitution was not written before the revolution. President during World War I.
I know it was before Harry Truman.
I'm drawing a blank. How many justices on the Supreme Court?
9.
How many justices has President Trump, this is not in the citizenship test, how many has he nominated?
2.
What are their names?
Kavanaugh and...
Everybody knows Kavanaugh. Before Kavanaugh, there was Neil... Gorsuch. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence?
Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson is correct.
As for the study, Vermont was the only state that got an overall passing grade on the multiple choice test.
The problem is you learn all this stuff when you're 10, 12 years old, and then you get old, and you forget it all.
So do you want to go back to school as an adult?
We need a refresher, is what I think. I mean, you ask a 15-year-old those questions, I bet they get them right away. Yeah.
It is 26 minutes after the hour. Border security versus climate change. One Democratic congressman wants to declare his own national emergency. Does this prove the left is out of touch when it comes to national security? That debate is coming up next.
That $3 billion would go back in tax incentives was only after we were getting the jobs and getting
There's not $3 billion in money that exists anywhere, correct?
Exactly.
And it's the left versus the left as the fallout of Amazon's abrupt New York exit grows. How Mayor Bill de Blasio is poking a hole in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's reasons for opposing what would have been a huge deal.
They don't disrespect someone.
All right, welcome back. And a look at our top headlines this morning. First, a wave of protests against the president's national emergency declaration happening across the country today. President Trump's declaration prompting more than 200 President's Day demonstrations. Some 10,000 people expected to march, organizers urging Congress to terminate that declaration. Next, the president heading to Miami today to give a speech on the crisis in Venezuela and the dangers of socialism. During a trip to neighboring Colombia, Florida Senator Marco Rubio pressured disputed Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to stop blocking his borders and to let U.S. aid into his country. Finally, ISIS holding more than 1,000 innocent civilians captive in Syria. Radical Islamic terrorists are refusing to allow those hostages to leave a small area in the eastern part of the war-torn nation. This happening as U.S.-backed forces prepare to declare victory over the extremist group. ISIS is holding on to an area that covers less than 1 square mile. Most of the caliphate has been taken back. Jillian.
Congressman Adam Schiff will refuse to stand down if special counsel Robert Mueller finds no collusion in the Russia probe.
Well, we're going to have to do our own investigation, and we are. We'll certainly be very interested to learn what Bob Mueller finds. We may have to fight to get that information. We're going to need to see it.
Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee are continuing their investigation despite GOP members finding no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. It comes as former acting director Andrew McCabe just revealed details about an inside job to attempt to remove President Trump from office using the 25th Amendment. El Chapo's lawyer is smacking down Senator Ted Cruz's plan to pay for the wall. The Texas Republican proposed legislation to use assets confiscated from the Mexican drug lord to finance border security. El Chapo's attorney calls the proposal ludicrous, saying the U.S. government has not yet seized a single penny from him. Jeffrey Lakeman telling CNN, quote, "There's a better chance of Mr. Cruz paying for the wall." El Chapo will be sentenced to life behind bars this summer. The health crisis for surviving victims of 9/11 is getting worse. The Victims Compensating Fund announcing they're running out of money. Frank Siller, the chairman of the Stephen Siller Tunnel to Towers Foundation, joined us in the last hour to explain what that means.
Our congressmen and people, congresswomen down in Washington have to step up to the plate and take care of those who are still suffering. It takes a long time for some of these illnesses to manifest. These people are dying, got to take care of their families afterwards.
There has been a 235% increase in claims of 9/11 related illnesses since 2015. As a result, victims are getting smaller payouts. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio setting the record straight about now canceled plans for a new Amazon headquarters. The mayor elaborating on $3 billion offered in tax breaks, saying Amazon would have seen the tax incentives only after the city saw jobs and revenue. He was in part replying to Democratic Socialist Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a strong opponent of the plan who questioned the incentives. The mayor places the blame for the now failed plans on Amazon.
The bottom line is this is an example of an abuse of corporate power. They had an agreement with the people of New York City, but Amazon just took their ball and went home.
Amazon says it will not replace New York with another city and will move ahead with its new headquarters in the D.C. area. Rob.
Jillian, thanks. A Democratic congressman hitting back at President Trump's national emergency declaration by declaring one of his own. Earl Blumenauer of Oregon tweeting, quote, "Congress should call a national emergency for the very real crisis that is climate change." So do either of these claims meet the threshold of an actual national emergency? Here to debate is political science professor at Iona College, Dr. Jeannie Zaino, and GOP strategist Ford O'Connell. Guys, thanks for getting up early today. Ford, I want to start with you. Democrats say the southern border, that's not a national emergency. Climate change is. What do you say?
Well, I think that this is nothing more than a cheap political stunt by a far-left congressman who's more interested in taking a swipe at President Trump than protecting the safety and security of the United States. Basically, what this is a friendly reminder of is that the Democrats have zero interest in getting illegal immigration under control. They want to thwart Trump at every turn, and they want to import a new set of voters, and they don't seem to understand that illegal immigration crushes the working class of this country.
Jeannie, your response.
Well, you know, we should look at Marco Rubio, the senator who said on January 9th that if the president declares this a national emergency, it's not going to be long before there's a Democratic president who does the same thing in regards to what climate change. Yeah. And here we go just a month later, and you have a congressman calling for it. We don't have a Democratic president, but if and when we do see it, President Warren or somebody else, it's going to be gun control. It's going to be climate change. This is the slippery slope that the president has introduced, opened up, and he can't, and conservatives can't be surprised when they walk down it. And certainly this is one of the fears that conservatives have had, and Marco Rubio predicted this.
Fortune makes a good point. I mean, there are a lot of Republicans that did not like this.
Yeah, and here's what I'm going to say. A national emergency is a power that Congress gave to the President of the United States via legislation. If Congress wants to change that power, then they should do it, okay? Or they should veto his national emergency. But the bottom line is they're not going to do that because they don't want to look weak on border security. This idea that a slippery slope, somehow Trump has opened the door, is a complete and utter fallacy. Yeah. This power has been in place since 1976. And trust me, when Democrats get into power, they're going to do this because they like doing executive actions, and they loved it under Barack Obama. A national emergency is nothing but an executive action under another name.
Yeah. Jeannie, let me ask you and press you for a second here. To say that it's not a national emergency may be one thing, but to ignore this for so long as a country, both parties, we have a huge problem at our southern border. Nobody can deny that. How did we get so comfortable just ignoring this to the point where it's being so marginalized now really only by the left?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a great question. Immigration has been an issue for a long time. It has not been addressed. It was not addressed in the 2 years that the Republicans owned Washington, D.C., both the House and the Senate. And Ford is right. Congress should have acted on this, and he's absolutely right. We've had an emergency declaration power given by Congress since 76, but you know what? We've had Republican and Democratic presidents since. Not one has declared an emergency on something that Congress has said it will not authorize. And that's the difference here.
Ford. Yeah, no, you make a great point. Ford, let's talk about the climate change here for a second. If they do try and push this is the big thing that they're going on at this point. How do you, I mean, okay, let's say America stops putting out any emissions at all. You still have a terrible problem with this all over the world. China pollutes twice as much as we do. How do you call that a national emergency in this country?
Well, they don't have any reason to do it. And let's be honest, this sort of resolution is really redundant given that the Democrats put out the Green New Deal, and we know that the Green New Deal is outrageously expensive and next to impossible to implement. The only way that we're going to be able to get pollution around the world under control is for every country, the major polluters, right. China, Russia, the United States, etc., all play by the same rules. Herein lies the problem. Only the Democrats and America want to play by these rules.
I mean, that was what the Paris Accord completely ignored, was letting China do whatever they want as we pay the burden.
And that's exactly right. Until everyone on the planet is playing by the same rules, we're never going to get pollution under control. That's a
interesting.
Fact.
Ford, Jeannie, thank you so much. We do appreciate it. Good debate.
Thank you, Rob.
All right. 38 minutes after the hour. A pause in political journalism. Instead of pressing Kamala Harris on policy, one reporter having a great time helping the 2020 presidential contender shop for clothes. It's the action from the campaign trail. Good morning.
Good morning to you and welcome back. Former Vice President Joe Biden slamming the country he once helped lead.
The America I see values basic human decency, not snatching children from their parents or turning our back on refugees at our border. The American people understand, please, because it makes us embarrassing.
Carly Shimpkins with Fox News Headlines 24/7, Sirius XM 115. here with the reaction online. It's primary season. This is going to happen a lot.
It is. Yeah. You know what? This is interesting because President Obama was accused of going on the apology tour when he was in office. Yeah. So this is reminding a lot of people of his time in office, and some people are all fired up about it. Dan says, yes, sir. It is embarrassing to watch a career politician bash our country overseas. Ruth tweets, not a winning slogan for 2020. And another Twitter user says, America is not embarrassing, but can't say the same for him. Biden was speaking to an audience of European leaders in Munich. He didn't mention the president by name, but he did make it very clear that he would govern very differently if he were in office.
Interesting. So Kamala Harris trying on a sparkly sequin jacket.
Yeah, that's right. So a group of reporters covering Kamala Harris documented their shopping trip with her. So CNN national political reporter Maeve Reston tweeted, we kind of forced Kamala Harris to try on this awesome, oversized rainbow sequin jacket. She snapped it up. The tweet goes on to say, NBC News political reporter Ali Vitali perfectly named it as the Mardi Gras jacket, hashtag 2020, hashtag South Carolina. You know, some people are saying that this sort of crosses the line in terms of behavior that a reporter would conduct on the campaign trail. Emily says, oh my God, it's so fun shopping with a person we're supposed to be objectively reporting on. Adam tweets, democracy dies in the darkness, or in this case, a boutique store. And Wayne, supposed to be a joke, says, are they going to report on her size? You know, it is common for reporters to interact with politicians on the campaign trail, but in terms of objective reporting, it's not the greatest look to be giggling and joking and shopping with them.
Yeah, it was optically kind of a bizarre moment.
Yeah,
Charlie. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Appreciate it, guys.
44 minutes after the hour, actor Jussie Smollett first claimed that he was attacked, obviously, in Chicago. That's the big story here. Says he was a victim. Former liberal Democrat Brandon Straka says